the report or essay that we've been working on in reading class this week. We're applying our reading strategies. The hand signal we've been working on is a strategy for finding the main idea. So it goes like this. You take your two fingers, say, I circle to prove that the naming word or words most often repeated is the main idea. And this is pulling that common thread out of the cloth that we've been practicing with in class. This hand signal stands for the report. Today our report is space junk. So we're going to apply this strategy to this article called Space Junk. And as we skim read and we look at the title, you will notice that the title says Space Junk, and this is actually what's called a directly stated title. So I'm going to write that out beside here. This is a directly stated title. What that means is the title is going to tell us what is coming up. Space junk is actually called a compound noun. Junk is a noun. Junk would be anything that's not useful anymore, right? So as you read this article, this essay about space junk, and you skim read and look in this first paragraph, it says the moon was the Earth's first satellite. A satellite is a small body that goes around a bigger one. The first man-made satellite went into orbit in 1957. In 1968, there were over 300 satellites in orbit. Some satellites send back weather pictures. Others send out radio waves. That doesn't say anything about space junk, but it does introduce the concept of something going around the moon, going around the Earth. That's in outer space. Also, it talks about things being in orbit. We know that things orbit in outer space. Now in the second paragraph, it says some satellites we call junk. In 1963, the United States put millions of small pieces of wire in orbit. They were used to carry on radio waves. Many of these wires may still be there. Some space junk was not put in orbit on purpose. One piece of space junk is a glove lost by an astronaut. So even though they didn't use the word junk in the first paragraph, they do start talking about space junk or junk in the second paragraph. And we know that space junk is making an inference to things in space that are floating around out there in orbit. And the first paragraph told us that satellites are in orbit. Therefore, you can deduce that space junk is a kind of satellite. Space is very big. Does it matter? This is the third paragraph. Does it matter if there is junk in orbit? Some people think so. They say we must be careful how we use this new resource. They think man puts into space, they think anything man puts into space should be built to come back to Earth when its work is done. All right, so they only mention junk in the last paragraph once. They do mention junk in the second paragraph a lot of times. And in the first paragraph, we talk about things being satellites. So this one's a little higher level, but you are in high school, and we know that when they're talking about space junk, we can infer that space junk is actually another word for the word satellite. That is the beginning of reading comprehension, is understanding that just because they don't use the exact same word choice, they do have that connection. It's not exactly a synonym. They're not the same thing, but it is another way of restating the main idea. So what we're going to do, the first direction is asking you to circle the word satellite. So I'm going to go through and do that very quickly. Satellite. We're going to look how many times